Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Final Fantasy IV's Postgame. In the last part, we went through, I think, Edward and Rosa's... Edward and someone else's trial, and now, time for more! With that said, I should note, and address an elephant in the room, Kenny is not going to be able to join me for the rest of the postgame, and even the interlude, because things on his end have just gotten super complicated. The new school semester in the middle of the pandemic's being rough on him, as is just having some bad months in general. So instead, I have a different friend joining me for the rest of postgame.
Hey, I'm Anthem. That's it.
Yeah, yes, that is all he is. He's just Anthem. He's a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon speedrunner. His Twitch shall be in the description, as with Kenny's has been in the past. And you've never played Final Fantasy IV.
Correct.
You're in the perfect spot for this because you'll learn nothing.
That's... You know what? That's fair. Can't argue that one.
Yep. Now, one thing...
A Dragoon.
Hey, Kain is the best Dragoon. He's also the first one of any notable import. I should note, Anthem's major Final Fantasy experience is Final Fantasy XIV, where Dragoons like myself are famous for animation locking and dying in AoEs. Whoops. Alright, so I've already told Anthem the rough concept of how the postgame's handled here, and now it's time for Rosa's trial, which is one of the rougher ones to get done properly. What is happening here is Lunar Asura is attacking all the various citizens of this town, and you need to walk around and find the proper ones to heal with whatever spell they need. Some of them, though, are fake NPCs, and if you heal them, will instead attack you as a battle that I don't remember the name of. This is also notably timed, as we'll see in a moment. There's going to be like weird Lunar Asura orbs orbiting you. This is very specific. Don't be surprised if getting the true ending in this quote-unquote takes a couple of tries. With that said, if you want to go for 100% bestiary, I do believe you need to fight one of the little offshoots at least once, but thankfully, since you can retry these infinitely, it just takes, I think, re-entering the ruins. It shouldn't take you too long to get that if you're going for that.
That's convenient, at least.
Yeah, because, oh boy.
Imagine just finally getting through this and suddenly you can't 100% it because you didn't cure the wrong thing.
Like, I think that frog I just passed a second ago in particular is a person you can fight for the actual encounter. With that said, I'm not doing that because I've already done a 100% bestiary run on my own time, and I don't care to show that off because that takes too long. I'm not sure what the exact timer is on this, but I'd like to note, what does this show about Rosa's character? Nothing. As I went over last part slightly, my biggest problem with the postgame is, at least I think I went over this, is I should know it's been a couple of months since the last recording. My biggest problem with this game's postgame is it does nothing for the characters or overall working storyline, which I feel most postgames should try to. Like, Final Fantasy XV's postgame dungeon at least tries to add to lore. Dragon Quest XI's is an entire last third of the storyline. This, barring one instance, is just, hey, here's some scenarios, do them.
Hey, it shows that she heals people.
Yeah.
You know, as the obvious white mage.
Yeah. Either way, boss of this trial is Lunar Asura, 130,000 HP, 65,000 experience points, 65,000 gil. No elemental weaknesses, same with the usual status effects. And it'll drop the usual summon book upon defeating it. The abilities, like prior Asura fights, depends on the face that is up front. She can use Blizzaga, Faraga, or Thundaga on you for just heavy damage, but she can also cast Mini and Toad, so having some status protection should be good here. She can also cure herself, but Restore is probably the more dangerous thing here, because I think that'll restore her for quad 9s. What you want to do if you want to go for the less magic-based strat is to have Reflect get casted on Asura immediately, either through a Lunar Curtain or Rosa's Reflect spell, so that any curative magic's just thrown right back at you, and then use defense-piercing magic, such as, I believe, Meteor, Bahamut, and otherwise just go all out. I also recommend using a Spider Silk to get slow on her from the start. I've had a lot of playthroughs where this fight just decides to not do what it should, though, and not follow the usual script. This is arguably one of the more annoying and the first really hard Lunar Eidolon, but it's still not much. Also, I'm trying to remember, has Asura even shown up in 14 yet?
I don't believe so.
Because a lot of the random things have.
I'm like 90% sure Asura hasn't shown up yet.
That's a player. These are all. This is a free company. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything official.
Yeah. I looked it up too. So it's
Kind of surprising, given that this is one of the longer-lasting Eidolons in the franchise. You'd think they would make a primal out of this pretty quickly. Maybe in 6.0.
Yeah. Is there... I feel like if it wasn't included in 2.0, or it just lost out on the best chance to, I guess? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose, and even then, given that Shadowbringers reused some Eidolons already, because we got another Shiva, we got another Titan, we got another Leviathan.
But, I mean, we got a different version of all the things that already existed.
Yeah.
So, it's awkward.
Yeah.
I'm still really surprised, yeah. Now that you mentioned it.
Honestly, the unfortunate thing is with the Lunar Eidolons is their strategy is very dominant strategy-like, in that it comes down to use Bahamut or equivalent black magic spell, heal with Rosa, go all out otherwise. In fact, the reason you may have seen I put the Ragnarok back on Cecil before this trial was I was planning ahead of getting Reflect on Asura, because the Lightbringer we got in his trial last part, as I mentioned, casts Reflect randomly as a way to kind of break the damage limit. But I didn't want to have Holy reflected back at me, so be careful with that. And similar with Kane, although I forget if we have that lance yet. I don't think so. I think that's actually from his own trial. Getting a little bit of my thoughts confused.
Because that would be too convenient.
Yeah, and actually, if I had that, that could be devastating, because the lance we get from Kane's trial's secondary ability is kind of busted.
How bad?
Casts Tornado on enemy that it hits, putting them down to critical HP.
Oh. Yeah, that's a little...
And I think it can work on certain boss fights if you get certain statuses on them ahead of time.
Huh. Yeah...
Otherwise, Lunar Asura, the only other thing I haven't mentioned is get haste on people, either by using that one weapon of Edges or getting it up with Rosa, just to get your DPS higher. Not too hard, but I feel that is also partially my fault, because I think I brought it up as well when I was with Kenny. I may have over-leveled a little bit for the post-game.
What level are you right now?
I'm... I already forget. I want to say mid-70s to early 80s. I think the ideal level curve for these is mid-60s to early 70s. Because that's, I think, when the best curve of challenge with breeze is, so to speak. Because you'll breeze through the random encounters no problem, but the bosses could still easily give you some trouble.
Yeah, people recommend to be like 55 at the start of Lunar Ruins.
Yeah, that's pretty apt. This is a case of... if you've seen any of my other RPG playthroughs on the channel, you know I try to keep the flow going well, so there's always a good amount of progress each video.
Yeah.
And there's a problem of at what point is the ideal level curve for that, because sometimes you overdo it and things move too fast of a pace. Other times you have a Xenoblade game where even if you are over-leveled, the game still takes 100 damn parts. It's complicated with RPGs compared to platformers. With that said, that's Lunar Asura. We get the Lunar Asura summon book for doing that, which is a usual use item. And I forget what that does off the top of my head. The more important thing is we're going to get another bonus for Rosa here, because we have managed to heal everyone. In particular, we get the White Ring. This changes Rosa's Pray command to Miracle, which randomly heals and restores all party members. It either does Cura, Curaga... it either does Cura or Kiraga plus Esuna. So all status ailments will also be recovered.
Is that now? What are the odds on that? Is that a like 50-50? Is that a 20%?
I want to say it's 50-50. If I'm wrong, usual editing future call out me will probably have already said whether or not it's 80-20 or something like that. With that said, for stat stuff, I still feel the Protect Ring is better because those extra defense multipliers are better for her in the long run. Though it does also notably, I believe, raise your spirit a little bit. So if your spirit's already not like above 80 or whatever the nearest multiple of 16 is, that could also be recommendable. And now we're on to the next set of 3 random floors. I should probably note, let me look back through this little guide I have up here. Any notable items you can get in the Rosa areas. Let's see, dry ether, remedies, elixirs. In one of the Rosa floors, I think it's Rosa B, where you're in a corner of the Sylph Cave, you can find the Dragon Claws for Yang, which is a pretty decent weapon. I think they're Holy Elemental, but I believe they're counted Holy Elemental Armor for some reason instead of Holy Elemental Weapon in the GBA version. Because the GBA version's full of bugs like that.
That was a Crystal Dragon. Of course.
Also, was that the Crystal Dragon? All right, go ahead. Because that was your enemy. First timer. Don't worry, this happened to Kenny too. I'll go over the Coral region in the meanwhile. 15,935 HP, 42,000 experience points, 32,000 gil. No elemental weaknesses, no notable status elements that you can really hit it with, aside from maybe Petrify or Instant Death. It can drop unicorn horns, coral whiskers, cat claws, or tabby suits, but it doesn't have anything to steal.
And the Crystal Dragon had 18,120 HP, 46,000 XP, 34,000 gil. No weaknesses as far as I can see. It can drop, what is it, White Fang, Dragon Shield, Wyvern Lance, and a Crystal Ring at a small chance.
The Crystal Ring there's probably the best thing out of all those. Because that can be equipped by, I believe, anyone. Gives decent ups to all your defenses and evasions. But I think it also gives you 5 agility and resistances to some status ailments. I can't remember exactly which ones. That's pretty good if you can get that. In fact, I'd say that might even be better than the Protect Ring.
Yeah, I think I saw that it was like an extremely low drop chance too, obviously.
Probably less than 1% if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think I saw 0.4, but...
Yeah, that sounds about right. Either way, now we're heading on to the edge section of the Lunar Ruins. And I believe in these particular rooms, I've managed to get a decent weapon for someone. Let's see, because this is the... Well, we're already at his trial. Oh boy, I hate this trial. Yes, I believe I got the... Gestalt? No, actually, I don't remember what I got. Either way, welcome to his Lunar Ruins trial. Edge's Lunar Ruins trial is a giant maze of a castle that you just need to find the way to the end to. And while that sounds
fantastic,
simple, there's a lot of hidden passageways, a lot of pitfall traps that make you fall into prior floors, and even some items that aren't that important but are very easily missed. I don't like this trial, and I honestly considered just outright skipping getting those items because it's what is it again? It's nothing too important. I think it's scrolls down. I think it's just like elixirs and X potions. And while X potions still are decent healing items at this point, because I think they are full HP restores, it's nothing too important. But what it is important to note, though, is the Elite Trooper. We encountered this enemy, I believe, last part. But in this trial specifically, you want to kill every single one you see, as they're guaranteed to kill I forget if it's called an Eblon key or a castle key. Either way, you need those keys to open locked doors found within this very trial. Thankfully, these enemies show up with enough regularity in the random encounters around here that you're guaranteed to amass more than you will ever probably use. But still, make sure you kill them.
I guess you don't need to end up grinding for more encounters for them, at least, right?
Yeah, you don't need to do that at all.
That's good. Don't you just love grinding? trying to find an enemy for a drop just to progress through the dungeon.
You
It's always
basically
the
did that
greatest.
last night, getting the Atma stuff for your white mage.
I know. I know.
I told you it would get tedious.
Okay, I did, like, the Atma stuff was fine. I honestly, doing an average of 50 fates to get everything for the weapon is fine. I didn't expect the books for the next part.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to have to kill 30 enemies, do 3 specific guild levies, do 3 specific dungeons, and 3 specific fates with a high rank as a white mage.
Final Fantasy XIV
For
is
one
a great
book.
MMO. With that said, it's
And
still
then
an
having
MMO.
to do that 9 times.
Yeah,
Like, I didn't expect that it was going to be that awful.
and just think, technically speaking, the level 60 equivalent gets a bit more grindy.
If I remember correctly, though, the level 61, you benefit from having the level 50 weapon?
Yes, you get a little bit of a jump start early on.
Yeah, you get a jump start, but not for the 60 to 70 jump. You don't get a jump on that one, if I remember correctly.
Yep. And here is probably the most annoying area of Edge's trial. You need to step on the red switches to open up the door. No, you need to step on a colored switch to open up the equivalent colored door. Falling through the floors here takes you to various areas. In which part it takes you to depends on where you fall. So this can be
Fantastic.
I've had playthroughs where I don't see this self cave recolor at all. Make sure you cast float here, by the way, because the lava does do damage every step you're on it. But the most annoying thing about that previous room, as you saw, there are notes on the wall that tell you which ways you have to walk on the what looks to be a bottomless pit area, but it's an invisible pathway. And I believe if you step off that path, you fall down to another area anyway.
Invisible pathways are the best.
I know, right? I'm thankful 14 hasn't had anything like this yet. Although I guess you might be able to count some of the jumping puzzle stuff.
How?
I don't know. Some people probably would.
Just because you're bad at the jumping puzzle
Look, I'm bad at
doesn't mean
Kugata.
that you...
I don't know how you managed to do that shit so quickly. With that said,
It wasn't that bad.
as long as you have like a Word document or even just like a pencil and paper on standby, memorizing which ways to go here isn't too terrible. In fact, that jump cut there was me writing down on a Word document which directions I needed to go. And also, some of these doors look like they would lead into the rooms above them, but some of them will also just lead to like teleports to other areas. The depth perception in this area isn't great. It's not. It's probably. I won't say this is my least favorite trial. Although it might be my least favorite trial to venture through, I have 3 least favorites. I have my least favorite mechanics, I have my least favorite to venture through, and I have my least favorite because of what it is for repeat playthroughs. Because you do technically get benefits for doing a trial over again on a single run, as I brought up before. For instance, if you redo, I think, Rosa's trial... what do you get there? I think you get Perseus arrows, which are the strongest arrows in the game. You get 10 of them. But that's not too important, honestly. I actually... What do you get for repeat?
Nice to have, but like...
Yeah?
Do you need it? No, not really.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah, I saw you had 8 keys there already, so yeah.
Yeah,
I get your point.
I fight a lot of those particular enemies. Thankfully, this is also an annoying portion. It's also very Final Fantasy 2 or 3. We have a lot of hidden pathways that we just can't see around, and there's a lot of dead ends here. Thankfully, none of them lead to bottomless pits for you to fall into, but I've gotten lost here before.
Also very Bravely Default.
Yeah, actually, no, it's like Bravely Default's the closest thing to a classic Final Fantasy we've gotten in 20 years. Really.
Damn, you don't need to call it out like that. You don't need to call people out like that.
Because it's what it was. Because at this point, Final Fantasy's evolved into something different in a lot of ways. And I like Bravely Default a lot, even though I think I'm really hoping Bravely Default 2 fixes the middle of the game being the same thing over and over again that Default had and Second had a little bit, if memory serves.
I mean, it was also for plot points. Like, there was a purpose.
There was
and
a
it
purpose.
was cool the first time.
Yeah, but then you had to do it 3 more times.
Yeah. Also, the fact of, like, Bravely Second doing the same thing to an extent.
Yeah, like I'm assuming the only my only hope for Bravely Default to is that they don't do that because it's a proper sequel and not the same world. Either way, time for the Lunar Eidolon of this trial. This is Lunar Ifrit. Lunar Ifrit, actually, is this your enemy? I forget. No, this is mine. Wait, is it?
Either way.
Either way.
Go for it.
Lunar Ifrit has 110,000 HP, 65,000 experience points, 65,000 gil, absorbs fire, so don't use that, but also don't use ice on it, because if you use, for instance, Shiva on it, it'll counter with an extraordinarily high power Inferno move as a counterattack that if you just cast it over and over again, the amount of turns he'll get is so high you'll probably be outpaced in healing. Otherwise, he only has Fyra, Faraga, and I think the multi-target Blaze ability that the Hellhounds have. In terms of pure damage, it's one of the simpler ones, but he still can use, I think, his super attack eventually. Base strategy for this, same as some of the other ones. Cast Mirage with Edge for Blink to avoid any of the Blaze attacks. Blink on anyone else before hasting as well. Flare is your best magical offense here because it's non-elemental damage in this game, so it's better than trying to hit a weakness. Spider Silk when you can, just to slow him down, and otherwise, go all out. If Rydia's getting low
Otherwise, hit it until it dies.
Yeah. Cover Rydia with Cecil in the case that she's getting low on HP for whatever reason. Otherwise, this is arguably one of the easier Lunar Eidolons. And I think this is also close to his color scheme in Final Fantasy VI. Think, keyword, maybe.
Yeah, that's kind of a problem for you, isn't it?
Yep. For beating him, like with the other Lunar Eidolons, we are going to get a Lunar Summon Book. I think Lunar Ifrit just does quad 9 fire damage to all enemies. Ah, here we go. Finally, I found it. I was also spending all that time trying to find the Lunar Asura Book's effect. It just deals quad 9 to all enemies. Nothing too interesting. Some of them just deal damage like that, uninterestingly. Others...
Quad 9 elemental or non-elemental?
Non-elemental, because Asura doesn't have an element by base. Others inflict, like, stop or totem the entire enemy party, and that's more useful. In fact, I dare say it's the best way to fight the final super boss in the postgame. Honestly, I can't tell if the post-game bosses being this uninteresting is just due to them not caring as much about Final Fantasy IV for the advanced one as they did 5 or 6, because it's Final Fantasy IV. Or if it's just because there wasn't much more they could do with 4 mechanically, because it doesn't have any of the Esper stuff, it doesn't have any of the job class system things you could toy around with. When you get down to it, 4 is such a simple game mechanically that I can't help but wonder if that was a limiting factor in designing these fights.
Probably? But you never know, I guess?
Yeah. Either way, for beating that trial, we also get the Hanzo's Glove accessory for Edge. That changes his steel command to Mug, which means you now have a steel that does damage, which is arguably worse in certain cases. But I think it also increases his agility and some of his attack a little bit. Maybe even his intellects for his ninja arts? I forget. It
increases intellect as he says, "Let's go back, that was fun."
I hate Edge. You know the meme in 14 of Dragoons being on the floor a lot? That's Edge in this game.
Nice.
Yeah, also raises his defense and magic defense a little bit. It's alright. With that said, this is probably going to be the last we see of Edge. Because because I think we do the next trial with him in our party as well. Because we still have to do that whole thing where we leave and come back, because you can only have 5 party members at a time, gotta swap in and out all over the place, it's kind of annoying. Either way, if you go through that trial again for whatever reason, I believe you get a Lustful Lolly Ho, the porn book we read in that one library earlier, instead of the Hanzo's Glove. So, a useless item. Oh boy, that's 2 new enemies. I believe the Golden Flan is mine. 12,384 HP, 42,000 experience points, 40,000 gil. No elemental weaknesses. It can be mini or pigged, and I recommend that because as a Flan enemy, it has pretty high defenses. Can't steal anything, but it can drop Dry Ethers, Stardusts, Lunar Curtains, or Golden Apples. You generally want to try and get those latter 2 if you can, because Golden Apples, as again, increase your maximum HP. Flare and Bahamut are the best way to damage them.
As for the Dust Moose, it has 8,882 HP. I don't know why it's not 8888, whatever. 21,000 XP, 20,000 gil, and looks like it's weak to Holy? It absorbs Dark. It drops... What was that?
I'm trying to think what even is a dark element in this game at this point, aside from maybe the Dark Swords from Cecil. I mean, actually, no, I think there's a summon or maybe one of Edge's arts that can do that.
Drops Dry Aether, Elixir, Fuma Shuriken, and a Soma drop potentially.
Ooh, that's good. If only that enemy wasn't annoying to find, because I was actually surprised I found that enemy encounter. From what I remember, that's a pretty rare one down here.
And if it wasn't a 0.4% drop chance for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you mean I went for pigtails in between the main game and the post-game? Shut up.
I'm so sorry.
Notable items you could potentially get during this next set of floors, by the way. You could get Soma drops or golden apples from various treasure chests. I think this floor in particular has a lot of those. You can get Edward's best loot on one of these floors, the Loki's loot. And I do show that off eventually, because as I mentioned, I think in part 1 of the post-game, I am showing off every one of the 60-something floors in this place.
Ew.
And that required a lot of going back in and out of certain areas. Elixirs, Fuma Shurikens, a Mega Elixir on one floor in particular. Time for our next new enemy, though. This is the Fiend Dragon. This has 20,830 HP, 47,000 experience points, 35,000 gil, no elemental weaknesses. It takes 4 times damage from dragon weapons, as usual, though, as with most dragons. Immune to basically every status ailment you should care about, except for maybe sleep. Nothing to steal, but it can drop Blue Fang's Dragon Whiskers, Protect Rings, and the Rising Sun weapon for Edge. Which, if you can get that, I believe that's better than the boomerang he might have right now. At least in my case. Though I believe in the original advanced version and GBA release, it is bugged and does not properly have the throw elemental most boomerangs have, meaning it won't do max damage from back row. Because the Game Boy Advance version of 4 is super buggy. It's like it's the worst version of the game, except for maybe the PlayStation version, arguably. Because did I ever tell you about the PlayStation versions of the 4 through 6 Anthem?
You did not.
In the case of Final Fantasy V in particular, it was really bad because that was the first version of 5 we got, and that translation was awful. For instance, an enemy called Wyvern, the dragon type, was titled Y, capital Y, space, Burn, B-U-R-N.
Huh.
That kind of quality consisted the entire time. Otherwise, the PlayStation version's really shit audio quality. The FMVs they added were kind of nice, but there was also load times between every menu, between every area, between every battle that could take upwards of 5 to 6 seconds, and that adds up after a while. And would you believe that's the version of 4 I first played? It's a wonder that I love this game now.
Yeah. Maybe you just played this version and realized, okay, this game wasn't that bad.
It was more so... I forget if it was around the time I played the DS version, or I went back for an emulator on the Super Nintendo and played that version out of curiosity. Because I liked a lot of what I was playing on the PlayStation, it was just that it was so tedious. There's the Loki's loot for Edward, so if you for some reason have him in your party at this point, that could be useful. I say for some reason if he's not useful. No, he actually gets a chance to be useful in this post-game, but because his trial is so early on, he doesn't really get a chance to be in the Lunar Ruins in my eyes. The Loki's loot, by the way, I'm trying to remember what that does by default. I think other than just general stat boosts, it does more damage to one particular enemy type. And I think it had a bug in the Game Boy Advance version where it didn't use attack multipliers.
Of course.
Fun! And I know that song, it's time for Kane's trial. But with that, we're going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 4 of the post-game, the most boring trial to redo. See you guys then.